you get a counter, and you get a counter, and you get a counter, and you get a counter. Everybody gets counters.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Chain of Commander, your source for general chit-chat on the Commander format. This is your Commander-in-Chief, Billy G here, with this month's episode of the Recruitment Office, where we bring in actual Magic players to talk about their own Commander decks to see if it's something that you might want to try out yourself. Now, before we get into this, I do ask, if you end up enjoying this segment at all, definitely consider subscribing. We'd love to have you folks join us going forward. And you know what? If any of these cards end up striking your fancy, we have a TCG Player affiliate link below. Feel free to use that to buy those cards. It won't cost you a single cent more, but it will help out the channel. That said, let's get going on today's episode, and hey, let's have our guest introduce himself here.
Hey, I'm Eric, and I'm here to talk to you about Atraxa Superfriends. It's a fun deck with Atraxa and a lot of Planeswalkers.
A lot of Planeswalkers, yep,
right.
as the Super Friends do. And this Atraxa character, what is Atraxa?
Well, it's a 4-mana 4/4. It's everything but red, so one of each mana color but red.
I guess I am not dressed appropriately for that one.
No, you did not. So it's a 4/4 flying, vigilance, lifelink, death toucher.
Okay.
And at the end step, it's a lot of keywords, and it's all of the important ones except for first strike, I guess, but it doesn't even really need it at that point. And it also, at your end step, it lets you proliferate. So you choose any amount of permanents that you want that have a counter on them already, and it adds one more of that counter.
Ah, okay. So I've actually did some research into Atraxa. You see a bunch of directions. People take it into the infect direction. Some people take it on like +1/+1 counters. Yep. And I see some people like you here bring in the Super Friends, because you can take that loyalty and bump it up at that end step there.
That's right.
All right. So how long have you been playing this Atraxa deck for?
About 3 months now I've had
3
it.
months?
I've played about 30 games with it, which isn't a humongous amount, but it was enough for me to get a very good feel for the deck and let me kind of swap some cards in and out and kind of optimize it a little bit for the power level I was shooting for.
All right. And like, how does Atraxa Super Friends compare to other Commander decks that you've played?
It's a little bit different because a lot of your other decks are either trying to combo out very quickly if you're playing a little bit more competitive, or if you're playing a little bit less competitive, you're trying to attack in with creatures or do some big flashy things. This deck, I guess, also does do some big flashy things, but you're really not trying to do either of those strategies. You're trying to control the board, assess the threat levels of all the different cards your opponents are playing, counter those threats that you deem the most detrimental to your game plan, and then just plus your Planeswalkers to get incremental advantage, and maybe eventually ultimate some Planeswalkers or get some emblems or some advantage that way. And that's really how you're trying to win the game, is to get through attrition and just trying to stop your opponents from being able to do anything about
so this is a grindier deck then.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
All right, that makes sense. So playing it a little bit slow, much more reactionary to what the rest of the table's doing there. All right, so I take it that you enjoy those grindier sort of gameplays?
Yeah, it's always been my favorite kind of thing to do through pretty much every format is grind out incremental advantage and kind of use as much skill as I can when I'm playing to gain advantages over my opponents.
It takes a lot of patience, more patience than I have, that's for sure. I just want to get the games over and done with sometimes. And so on a scale like 1 to 10, how powerful would you consider this Atraxa deck? So
the build I have right now is about a 6 on the power level scale. But Atraxa can be, Super Friends specifically, and I guess all the other Atraxa decks, but Super Friends can be made in a bunch of different power levels. You can go anywhere from up to maybe an 8 if you really, really optimize it, all the way down to, I think, a 4 if you want to. And a lot of that has to do with how many Planeswalkers you run. So my deck's running about 30 Planeswalkers, which was about the level that I wanted to shoot for this power level. I think if you wanted to bump it up to an 8 and really optimize it, you would take a lot of those Planeswalkers out, maybe get down to 12 to 15, and run a lot more stacks and combos and controlling cards in your deck. And then if you wanted to go the opposite direction and add a ton more Planeswalkers, maybe up to 50 even, I think you could get it down to a 4 and have less of those controlling cards, less board wipes, things like that. To really just throw a Planeswalker out there and see if it survives the turn.
Yeah, but that's like thinking of, you don't really design a deck necessarily for power level. You design the deck how you want to play it.
Exactly.
First,
and that's
whatever power level it ends up being, it ends up being.
That's why I landed on 30. But yeah.
It's just like, you want to play 30 Planeswalkers, go ahead. Play 30 Planeswalkers. It's about what you want to play.
Yep.
All right, so what are some of the primary cards? Like, are there any cards that you would say are auto includes in a Atraxa Super Friends deck?
Yeah, I think there's several. Deep Glow Skate, I would consider an auto include. Doubling Season, both those cards just double automatically the amount of counters on your planeswalkers. They lead to really fast ultimates, really fast wins with multiple planeswalkers. Say something like Ugin the Spirit Dragon. When you have Doubling Season out and you ultimate your Ugin, then you drop 7 more planeswalkers and they all get to ultimate right away. It gets really out of hand really fast.
Yeah.
So those are really auto includes for plussing your planeswalkers very quickly. And then things like the Chain Veil to let you or activate your planeswalkers more than once. Oath of Teferi, same thing. And Rings of Brighthearth to activate your planeswalkers again, not getting loyalty, but getting that ability another time. Lets you do some combos and just lets you gain a ton of advantage for such a small mana cost.
All right.
So those are the cards I would really auto include in the deck.
All right. On the opposite end of that spectrum, are there any cards that you would just didn't cut it for you, that you think you would have liked but didn't end up working out for you?
Yeah, the biggest one that people will be surprised about is Karn Liberated. Yeah, so in Commander I found that his ability to take cards out of a single player's hand wasn't that good. He was a lot of mana to just remove one thing from the board, and then restarting the game, even when it's the right play, is pretty cumbersome and not very fun for the table. So I found that it's just often not a fun card to play with, and not a good card when you really need it to be.
So I play Tron and Modern, so I'm familiar with Karn Liberated, and like as much of a powerhouse as he is there, you are dealing with one opponent, not three other opponents that are all doing their own thing. So yeah, having very good spot removal for 7 mana, while great in a head-to-head matchup, maybe not so great when there's like 3 people all trying to do their own thing.
Yeah. A couple other cards were Primeval's Glorious Rebirth.
Okay, that's the one from Dominaria, right?
Yeah, it's the legendary, which when you have a legendary permanent out, you play it, and it's 7-drop, and you get all legendary cards back from your graveyard to the battlefield. So late game, you could get a bunch of planeswalkers back, but I thought it was a little bit too situational and too mana intensive to include in the deck. And the other cards that I don't include in my build are a lot of the creatures that have proliferates, and a lot of the tutors for planeswalkers that are creatures. And the reason for that is I play a Deep Glow Skate and Proteus Staff combo in the deck. So Proteus Staff will send a creature that you control to the bottom of your library, but all the creatures in your deck are either generated through planeswalkers or are Atraxa them herself. So the line is to Proteus Staff one of your tokens or Atraxa, and Atraxa goes back to your command zone. And then you get Deep Glow Skate however far down in the deck it is, and Deep Glow Skate obviously automatically doubles all the counters on your planeswalkers, and that lets you ultimate all your planeswalkers that turn.
Okay, so you wouldn't even have Arena Rector in there either.
No, I don't have Arena Rector. I don't have anything like Thrumming Bird or anything like that. Not to say those cards aren't playable, but in my build, I think that combo is powerful enough, and the creatures that you play are kind of a negative interaction with the number of board wipes that you want to play.
That's true.
So you want to be wiping the board and controlling the board often enough that those creatures that you're going to try to get out to proliferate a lot of times by hitting your opponents are probably going to get wiped away because they're not going to protect your planeswalkers.
That's true.
So it's kind of a negative synergy if you go that way. Not to say that it's bad. I think if you wanted to build the deck that way, it's very viable. But I just chose to go the Proteus Staff route.
What about that? What was that one from? What was it? Oath of the Gatewatch? What was it? Call of the Gatewatch?
Deploy the Gatewatch?
That one. Yeah, what about that one?
So when I was building the deck, I kind of ran the numbers on that card, and it seems you need about 48 cards, 48 planeswalkers in order to hit 2 planeswalkers consistently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's just too many planeswalkers for me. I just didn't want to run that many planeswalkers. Yeah. So it's just not feasible in the deck. You'll hit 1 planeswalker too many times, and it's just for 6 mana, it's not worth it if you don't hit 2 planeswalkers.
I mean, but like you said, if you want to go out there and play 40 planeswalkers, anyways, I mean.
Yeah, that sounds great. You'll be almost every time. I would love to play it in that case.
Yeah. All right. Well, outside of the planeswalkers, which obviously they're the core of the deck, and then you got your mana base. There's a chunk of spells in the middle there that I figure you kind of use to like protect your game plan, set up your game plan? What sort of spells are you playing?
Yep. So you play a lot of counter spells. I like Commit to Memory and Counterspell itself, Swan Song, things like that, to kind of stop your opponent's big plays. So whenever you have to assess your threats appropriately and know what's going to be very detrimental to you and only slightly detrimental to you, of course, and use those counter spells appropriately so that you can progress your game plan to a point where you're going to get enough advantage that it's going to overcome your opponents, of course. And then you're going to use some board wipes. I think I run 8 board wipes in the deck, which is pretty high for a commander deck. But
normally you're looking around maybe 3 to 5 is your normal
exactly
amount.
Things like Damnation, Wrath of God, Toxic Deluge. Those cards are really valuable in stopping your opponents from obviously attacking your planeswalkers, but also stopping them from really snowballing on board and gaining an overwhelming board advantage. That's something you need to stop from happening for your planeswalkers to survive. Other than that, you're running a lot of mana rocks because the deck is very mana hungry. It's got a very high average CMC just because a lot of the planeswalkers are pretty expensive.
They're normally 4, 5, 6 costed plus.
Exactly. Yeah. So mana rocks, you can run some more expensive ones, in terms of dollar value, like Mana Crypt if you want.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to forego those. Depends on how high of a power level you really want. But you can choose one way or the other to go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have some pretty powerful generic commander spells like Smothering Tithe, Rhystic Study, Cyclonic Rift, decks
everybody's favorite
cards. So, there's some kind of, I guess you'd call them taxing effects that you can run to really help accelerate your game plan a little bit.
All right, and you said you had a deck list for this online somewhere?
I do.
All right, you mind if I link it below?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, then I'll stick a deck list below. You guys can give it a gander at your convenience. Hopefully it provides a good starting point for you here.
Yeah.
All that said, though, I want you to kind of look at the camera here. To our viewers at home, I want you to give one last pitch as why they might want to consider Atraxa Superfriends to be their next commander deck.
Sure. So Atraxa is just really fun when you're playing a lot of planeswalkers. It really lets you play a lot of planeswalkers that you wouldn't normally play in any other constructed format. And gaining that incremental advantage and ultimating planeswalkers and gaining this advantage is a really fun way to play commander that's not your typical commander deck that you would play. And it's just, like I said before, a ton of fun, and I really recommend it.
All right. So, Atraxa Superfriends, hopefully we put it somewhere on your radar as for decks that you might want to play going forward. Like I said earlier in the video, though, if you guys ended up enjoying this segment, definitely feel free to subscribe below. We'd love to have you joining us going forwards. We also have a TCG Player affiliate link. If any of the cards we talked about in this segment tickled your fancy, consider buying it through that TCG affiliate link. Like I said, it doesn't cost you a single cent more, but it does help out the channel. All that said, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoy your weekend. I believe this is coming out right after the tail end of the Zendikar Rising pre-release. Let me know in the comments below how yours went. I'd love to hear it. But beyond that, I'll see you all again in the future. You all take care.